to speak about some very key, essential inyonim in the life of a Tomim, and it was Kemayim Korim. It was so special to have these discussions, and I received some feedback from some of the participants, and it's fantastic. It's a true utilization of, you know, the way the Rebbe told us to utilize technology for Divrei Kedusha. And of course, when we talk about the Tomim, the life of a Tomim, this is at the heart, at the center of our shlichus, of our mission. Everything becomes possible once we have Tmimim. We have an army, Kol HaYotzel U'Melchemes Beis David. We have the Chassidim that are ready to go out and einem in the Welt and conquer the world with the Rebbe's message. So this is fantastic. And I want to give a tremendous yasher koach to the panelists, to Rabbi Gordon, to Rabbi Farkash, to Rabbi Sternberg, for really doing a fantastic job in dealing with the issues. Every person, every one of you in your way, contributing in an immeasurable way. And this week, we're going to move on to talk about certain things that I think for the Akeres Habayis, we're more in the dark about these things. And I also just want to mention to those of you who are joining that weren't aware, the program is officially 90 minutes. So Emir Hashem will have a hard ending, Emir Hashem, at 3:30. So just to keep you in the know, and of course, this can also be seen on anash.org, and there are others who are watching on other platforms. So, you know, from when our children are young, you know, we pack a lunch, we put them on a bus, and we send them to cheder, we send them to yeshiva, and so on. One of the things that happens when Bachurim get a little older is that Sidrei HaYeshiva are not limited to 7:30 in the morning to 9:30 at night. But one of the strange things that happen is that a Bachur comes home, and 10 o'clock at night, he's going out. What's going on? There's a Fabrengen. There's like this undefined, this unknown. When is he going to come home? What is this? What do they do at the Fabrengen? There's like this mystery. And a parent, what are they going to say? So first, the general, you know, if you could share with us, and Rabbi Gordon, I'll start with you, to share with us a little bit, just what is it, you know, the significance and the role of upbringing in a Bacher's life, or like what is a good Fabrengen, and so on. If you could share that a little bit with the Olam.
I'll begin by sharing a story that I heard from Rabbi David Edelman, Olav Shalom. He told me that when he was learning in 770 as a young teenager, and during the Chayusei of the Frierdiker Rebbe in the Tav Shins, so before he went home, he was living in Baltimore. Before he went home for Pesach, he went into Yechidus to the Frierdiker Rebbe. And the Frierdiker Rebbe asked him, "Was hast du sich ausgelernt in Tomim Chetmimim?" Loosely translated, what did you learn? What did you sich ausgelernt? What did Tomim Chetmimim teach you? So he, not understanding the Yiddish so well, he said, the Rebbe fragt, was hab ich gelernt? The Rebbe is asking, what did I learn? So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, no, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, was hast du sich ausgelernt? And this went on a few times. Eventually, the Frierdiker Rebbe clarified for him with a mashal what he meant. The point that I want to make is like this. A Bacher spends time in yeshiva, and there's two very important things that happen during a Bacher's time in yeshiva. One is that learning. He has to learn a lot of nigla and a lot of chassidus and get a lot of information. That information, first of all, it's a mitzvah, one of the Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, the greatest mitzvah in the Torah to study Torah. And the study of Torah shapes a person, has a tremendous effect on us. It's the most precious gift that the Eibishter gave us, etc., etc. But at the same time, the question is, what does it all teach him? How does it form him as a chassid? How does it inspire him? How does it set him up for life? And a lot of that happens at a Fabrengen. At a Fabrengen, you take the information and the knowledge that is available, and you try to create an atmosphere that causes it to be internalized, where people can get enthusiastic about it, get excited about it, have a warmth for it, have a geschmack and a delight in Chassidish inyanim. And often Bachrim benefit tremendously for a very long time has a long-lasting effect, the Farbrengens. Now, obviously, like everything else, nothing is foolproof, and it's possible for people to say that they're going to Farbrengen and not use it out in the right way. And of course, if people say they're going to Farbrengen, they end up hanging out outside with friends that are not such a good influence. Parents have to be on top of it. They need to speak to their children, be open with their children, so their children should be open with them, and ask them what happened by the Farbrengen, what did you come away with, how did it inspire you, or did it inspire you, did you gain from it, etc., etc. Parents definitely have a role to be on top of the situation. But when a Farbrengen does what it's meant to do, it could be a tremendous benefit for the Bach.
Rabbi Sternberg, on this topic of Farbrengen, would you mind, in addition to addressing any nekudas that you would like to address, but how about the different setting? In other words, in what way is the Farbrengen different, let's say, than a shir?
Okay, so like Rabbi Gordon said, the shir is sometimes information. The Farbrengen is when you live it, when it seeps in. And the fact that it's not something that they feel is part of the academics, it's another subject. This is when we're talking about it as people and talking about how this applies to our life. I think what makes a Farbrengen successful is more the attitude of those that are coming to participate than the one that's officially Farbrengen. Like there's now this title, someone is the one that's Farbrengen, he's supposed to be entertaining or inspiring everyone. What's special about a Farbrengen is that usually Chassidim are coming together with a will to be inspired. And I don't know if what the Mashpia is going to be saying is going to talk to me, but something's going to talk to me. Maybe the Niggin will talk to me. Maybe I'll be talking to myself. But the next few hours I'm devoting towards moving on to the next level, more towards internalizing what I know in theory, but to actually actualize it. And sometimes it's the Niggin. Sometimes the Niggin is a time where a Bach is sitting with friends, Chassidim are sitting together. And this is a time where I decide that all those lofty theories that I know, and maybe the Mashpia is not telling me something I never heard before, but it's the mode of coming to a Farbrengen that I want to change. I want to internalize things. And there'll be something here tonight that might help me do that, just sitting together. There's the power of a Chassidish Farbrengen, the Malach Machol, Kenish Ufton. It's not how much what's going to be said as the attitude of the people sitting there, the Achdus, we're in this together, and we're looking to be inspired, not just to be inspired, we're looking to make a real change in our lives. So it's very different. It's very different. You know, sometimes the shir could be inspiring, sometimes the Farbrengen could be, could have a lot of interesting information. But the main point is not the information, it's more what we're going to internalize.
Rabbi Farkash, did you hear the question? So we're asking, as parents, we know that they're Seder. They leave in the morning, they come home at night, but suddenly, Bachurim, 10 o'clock at night, they're leaving the house. What's going on? There's a Farbrengen. There's like this mystery. Like what is it? What role, what is the inyan of a Farbrengen for a Bacher? What's a good Farbrengen? Whatever you need to know in Zmana Yeshiva, what's the inyan of a Farbrengen?
Okay, I'm sure it was already said. I don't know what, before I came a little late, I had a problem with my internet. Al Koponim, I always tell the Bochrim, the inyan of a Farbrengen, in Yiddishkeit, there's a famous expression of Elam Shana Nefesh, that the world is based on three things, which is Elam, which is space, Shana, which is time, and Nefesh, which is life. And Yiddishkeit is also based on the three things, space, time, and life, Nefesh, soul. So space is everything. All Shulchan Aruch, all Yiddishkeit goes around the place and time. everything at its place, everything at its time. There's man kirishmas, man file, Shabbos, and davening, and everything has a certain time, everything has a certain space, certain place, and the Shulchan Aruch, everything goes around that. Achsisha Fabrengen is the nefesh. It's putting in the life in all those inyanim. If not, it becomes a very systematic, and it's losing the whole soul. Fabrengen, that's the idea of Fabrengen. You can never know how Fabrengen is going to end up. Fabrengen, you can know how it starts sometimes, but you don't know how it ends. Not every Fabrengen you're going to come out a bigger Oived or a bigger maskil. Yeah, but a Fabrengen gives you a certain refreshing, a certain taste, chayus. And since chayus is something it's very hard to describe, so also a Fabrengen is hard to describe. But lepoil, the reality shows that people, Bachrim, young people especially, everybody, Fabrengen gives them the whole chayus and Yiddishkeit and the life.
And Rabbi Farkash, what would, if you had a comment or a thought to say about the inyan of saying l'chaim, what would you say about shtiyas yash?
So I would say that we are Chassidim of the Rebbe, and we got the Rebbe taught us how we have to, from one end, saying l'chaim is important. I want to make that comment also because there's so much speaking about the fear of saying l'chaim. So sometimes we forget that saying l'chaim is important. It's one of the Seides Achsidus and Darkei Achsidus since day one from the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid and the Alter Rebbe. So saying l'chaim, of course, is something important because that's what the Gemara says even before. The koyach of Gdeila Legimo, that drop of l'chaim, of that elevates and makes a certain connection and takes away some of the mechitzes of the separations between people, and that's why l'chaim is an important thing. But the way the Rebbe gave us the education of our generation is there's no need. The Mele, it's also prohibited that a bacha should drink more than their limitation. And every place, the Anolas HaYeshiva, of course, it takes the achrayus and watching over the bachrim that they should be able to keep that achlote. I'm sure younger bachrim have the Anola has even what kind of l'chaim they should drink. Older bachrim, it's the agboles that the Rebbe put, which is the 4 times and not more, and that's what we need in order we should get a little more elevated on top of go out of a little bit of our yeshus, of our mitzias, of our agboles, and then we're able to get connected. So the l'chaim is important because that's part of Darkei Achsidus, but the agboles are important because that's what the Rebbe gave us that chinuch.
Rabbi Sternberg, on the note of l'chaim, I would also ask you if you could also address a little bit like the parents' role with regards to l'chaim.
So it's a minig chassidim, and if we're going to look at it practically, l'chaim is something that loosens up the situation. We put down our guards. We're more receptive. We allow ourselves to think outside of the box. But I don't think we should be dependent on that. I don't think that our inspiration should be dependent on that. But it's still a minig. I don't think parents should tell their children absolutely not to say any l'chaim. If they're old enough, we're not talking about little children, the bachrim in yeshiva, they're given a little bit of l'chaim. I don't think parents should discourage, but it should not be a dependency. It should not be something that without that we can't be inspired. Without that, it's something that's there. That's the minig of chassidim, and that's what we do. When bachrim are a little older, they could say a little more. Like Rabbi Farkash said, there is never a reason for a bachar to say more than 4 little kelechklef, 4 little shots. And if you hear from your children, when I drink more, I get more inspired, and it does better for me, nothing good, definitely not long term, will come out in the neshama expressing itself, in a yid growing in avodas Hashem through losing control. Even if in the moment it might have done good for them, but long term, this is not going to help them. So yes, not to tell them never allowed to drink and not any amount. This is part of Darkei Chassidus, and it does help. It does melt a little bit of the cold nature that teenagers have sometimes, and watching over their image. But too much is not good. And I just want to stress one point. One of the most important things that Bachrim need to succeed is self-control. And if a Bachar can't control himself, not to drink more than 4, then this isn't only in this area that he's losing control. This could be a gateway to losing control in other areas in his life. And this is something the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke about already, that Bachrim, after saying L'chaim, sometimes can fall to the worst places if their L'chaim wasn't as a part of a genuine His'eres by Fabringen, and especially if they're drinking too much and they completely lose control over themselves. So yes, with a limit, and it does help, and it is Darkei Chassidus, and your mamshech brachas when you're saying L'chaim, there's a certain unity that it brings if it's the right amount. More than that is absolutely negative. Even if your child tells you it does good for me, and he might feel that in the moment, this is hurting his brakes, and his brakes, his self-control is crucial for that tzlacha of a bachar in yeshiva.
Rabbi Gordon.
I'd just like to add, I was zeicha to go out on shlichus in Tavshin Mem Gimel, and Baruch Hashem, every year thereafter I would be by the Rebbe for Simchas Torah, and Moitzai Simchas Torah, when I went over for Keshel Bracha, the Rebbe would always give me a bottle of mashke, which I understood was meant to be used for Fabrengens throughout the year, and we used that bottle of mashke until Pesach. We don't sell the Rebbe's mashke in chametz. So there's no question about it that the Rebbe saw the mashke and the l'chaim as a positive tool in the chinuch and the inspiration of Talmidim, and that continues to be the case. But like with everything else, there's a difference between using things in a positive way and chas v'shalom abusing them. And it's very important to educate Talmidim to be able to differentiate between the two, be able to differentiate between achsidische bissel l'chaim and between Rahman al-Islam, alcohol abuse. I heard from Rabbi Zion Rader, alav hashalom, who was in London. Many people knew him. Was one of the Ziknei Chassidim here in London, and he had a close relationship with Ramendel Futterfass in Ramendel Futterfass's early years when he was in London. And he said that whenever he would come to Fabrengen, Ramendel Futterfass would come over to him and say, "Rader, zok l'chaim." And he obviously wasn't so keen on drinking, but Ramendel Futterfass pushed him. One time he held an event in his house, which was, they brought together people, and Rabbi Zalman Posner alav shalom came over from America to speak. And the introduction to the event was, first there was an hour or half an hour of cocktails, and then the program began. And Ramendel Futterfass came along, and Mr. Rader, as the host, went over to, during the cocktails part of the program, and Mr. Rader went over to Ramendel Futterfass, and he said, "Ramendel, zok l'chaim." So Ramendel Futterfass turned to me and he said, "Was er in goyim? Drinking bronfen? Are we goyim? We drink alcohol? We drink whiskey?" It was very, very important to educate Bachrim that there's a major difference between achsidish l'chaim and drinking Rahman al-Islam like goyim. In our yeshiva, I go out of my way, first of all, when there's a fabrengen, make sure that the mashke is controlled. I teach the Bachrim that we never put mashke in the freezer, even though maybe they think it tastes better that way, but we're not drinking for the taste, we're drinking because we're chassidim. And we drink dafke weisse mashke, although it really doesn't make a difference. But just to point out to the Bachrim that we're doing this as chassidim, we're not alcoholics. And it could have a very, as mentioned by a number of the mashpiyim here today, that can have a very beneficial effect if it's used in the right way. And of course, it can have a very negative effect if it's abused.
Rabbi Gordon, I want to continue for a moment with a following question. One of the, we have many Neshei B'nai Yisrael here, Neshei Yisrael, and one of the challenges that mothers experience is to have a healthy relationship with their older boys, with the Bacharim, as they grow a little older, sometimes there's a sense like there's a disconnect. Bacharim 17, 18, 19, 20, there becomes a certain distance. And the question that is being asked is, how can mothers keep and nurture a warm relationship with their Tomimim?
I think that it could obviously be a challenging matter. I think that mothers show an interest in hearing from their sons what's going on and what do they think about different things. They want to hear their opinion on things. They want to hear how they experience things, and they can share how things were. When the mothers can share how at certain different junctures in their life, how they were inspired and how they grew, how they made certain resolutions, and there's a lot that Bachrim have in common with their mothers and can relate to, and it's a question of keeping the communication open to the best of one's ability. And of course, like everybody else, a Bachar likes to be complimented. A Bachar likes to know that his mother is having nachas from him and appreciates what he's doing and respects what he's doing and recognizes the fact that he's makes certain sacrifices to get up on time and to keep Seder and to learn, and they get if Baruch Hashem, they're getting good marks from the yeshiva, to emphasize how wonderful that is and how much they respect what the Bachar is doing. And often the Bachar will reciprocate to that, respond to that positively.
If I may, it seems that what you're saying is that young children, their mothers are being madrich them the whole time. They're instructing them, do this, do that, and so on. And as Bacharim get older, what you expressed is to give them the space to share what's happening with them. In other words, to listen a little more to what's happening, and also to share things that create a connection, which are all moving away from the giving them instructions. I'm not saying that you didn't say that they shouldn't do that, but that the relationship would be nurtured around that, like this shift, that they're having more of an adult discussion with and also similar, like expressing interest and also sharing with them things that are going on that would engender that kind of relationship. Did I understand correctly?
Very well put, very well put.
Okay, thank you. Rabbi Sternberg, what would you like to add something in this area?
So I want to say this. I look at Bachrim both in Yeshiva Ketana and Yeshiva Gedola, high school age, and after that. Bachrim that are in constant touch with their parents are happier. They're happier people. They're in a better mood in general. They're successful. They're healthier emotionally. And Bachrim that are not in touch with their parents are less. And I see this again and again. Bachrim that look locked up, they're suffering. Ask them, when was the last time you called home? Sometimes I have to remind the Bachar Erev Shabbos, call home. You didn't speak to your parents in a week. What parents have to know is, even though the teenagers give off this independent front, the healthiest thing for a child at any age, including my age, the healthiest thing for our emotional immune system is to hear our parents' voices. Just to hear hello, how are you from the people that love us most is so powerful. It's so empowering. And teenagers are going through all kinds of things. So really, naturally, they should want to talk home every day. But there are a few things that get into the way. And the two things that get into the way is when there's nothing going on in the conversation. Where hello, hi, how are you? Baruch Hashem, how are you? Baruch Hashem. Anything new today? No, Baruch Hashem, everything's good. Anything new by you? No, Baruch Hashem, everything's good. If that's the way the conversation is going to be every day, and they go dry, so that takes away, they feel that the parents aren't really interested. It's very important to have interesting and meaningful conversations with your children. If it's not going to be every day, as often as you could, And like Rabbi Gordon was saying, share things that are going on in your personal lives. There are those children that like having a say. They're leaders. Ask them what they think. What do you think about that? Or think of doing that, or think of doing that. What do you think? They have a say in what's going on with their younger siblings at home. For some teenagers, that makes it for them. That's a meaningful conversation that they were able to, their input. For some, they really want to just hear what's going on. For some, want to feel that you're interested. When do you do your laundry last? How's it working out with your chavrusa? Share something interesting from the Farbrengen. What did you feel about that? Some want to listen more, some want to talk more, some want to give advice. Try to tap into which conversations really roll well with your children and put thought into it, because there isn't a bigger gift that you could give your child than yourself. They need the relationship more than they know it. And talking, when they're away from home, especially, when you're on the phone with them, try to put everything else away, try to focus and think what you can share with them, think what you could ask them, try to remember something they told you in an earlier phone call and ask them how that's going. Sometimes they forgot about it. I know personally, when my parents asked me about something that I told them about last week and asked them, so how did it go? Did it work out? And I already moved on. I forgot about it. But that's so meaningful to know that my parents are still thinking about it. And if we could just make these mental notes in our mind, so our children feel that we were really listening, and we're interested in knowing what's going on, and we're going to follow up. And that creates a relationship that they feel that we care and they want to share. They're waiting to talk to us that they could share certain things that they're going through. Another thing that could kill the relationship is when they feel that if they're sharing a hardship, they're met with judgments, with criticism. So they have enough of that going on in school. Have the principals and teachers that do that. If they're sharing that something went bad, they know they did something wrong. They know they're already told. They have to, again, it doesn't mean we're approving the behavior, but they should not feel that that there's too many judgments and criticism coming from parents.
Thank you, Rabbi Farkash. What would you like to add something in this nukuda? I know the pasuk says, "Avi v'imi azavuni v'Hashem yasfeini," but no.
I agree to everything that was said just now. I only want to add a little more nekuda to all this. The fact that the Bachrim, they come to a certain age, to a certain distance with their parents, it's not a problem. It's a normal, healthy thing, which is part of a Bacher, a person growing, becoming independent, and that's part of life. We as parents, we always want to have the kids with us, and we want to have the control of them. We want to feel them our babies, and especially Yiddish mamis, we love to feel that they're going to be our babies, Leilam Voed, but it doesn't happen. It comes at a certain age, and the kid he doesn't want to. He wants to have his own life, and the fact that he creates a certain distance, and sometimes it comes even out like chutzpahdik. Don't take it something against you. This is nothing against you. This is part of his development as a normal person, becoming independent. That's part of life. So first of all, the second you're taking it as a natural part of life, so you don't doesn't become it doesn't become as like a machlekes, a argument. You accept it. You're able to accept it and be there and have patience. That's number one. And then comes the ideas that we were speaking just now, which is changing, like shifting, like Rabbi Leifke explained it in a beautiful way, which was said about, which is the idea of changing the way of the dialogue. Until now, it was more like, Tati says, Mommy says, and you do, and there's a certain shift that has to happen. It's more about, let's have a talk. Let's speak about, And sometimes a good idea also, that I see works a lot, is that you speak to them about your questions, like your things. You're making them feel that they're big boys, and you want to listen. I have a certain issue, I have a certain doubt, I have a certain thing that bothers me. Maybe I want to hear your opinion. Sometimes that makes a major relationship, because they feel that you're looking at them as they look at themselves, like big boys, and so that's a very important nekuda.
Shukayach. Rabbi Gordon, I'd like to ask you, one of the challenges for parents is the idea of sending their children away, sending them away to yeshiva. And even though we do it, it doesn't come easy. And it's not just about that we're going to miss them, but sometimes we really, really doubt if it's the right thing. Sometimes we feel that there's a bacher that really needs their home. They really need that support, like what was mentioned here. So what would you, you have many bachrim that come to learn in London from out of town. What would you offer to parents as things to think about, ideas, nekudas, about why it's so important to send away a bacher? What are the considerations to take in around this question?
Obviously, there's two sides to the coin. On one hand, Chazal tell us, have a goylulim kaim Torah, one should exile oneself to a place of Torah, which means that for a bacher to live in an atmosphere where home is far away, and he's living in an atmosphere which is kulai, Tomim, Torah, Avodas Hashem, could be very, very beneficial for a bacher's ruchnistic growth. And the fact is that in many, many cases, bachrim thrive from being in a yeshiva atmosphere, absolutely living it 24/7. At the same time, the parent's responsibility for caring about the bacher and knowing what's going on in the life of the bacher doesn't stop just because the bacher is far away. It's important for the parents, as Rabbi Sternberg mentioned, to speak to the bacher often so that you get a feeling of how things are going. It's important that you have a relationship with somebody in the anhola of the yeshiva that gets a phone call or communication of some sort on a regular basis. Just when an anhola member gets a phone call from a parent of a bacher, it just gives that extra push, that extra reminder that this bacher needs a bit of extra attention, which is very healthy for most people. So it's important for parents not to forget about their children, to stay in touch with their anhola, and speak to their children often, communicate with their children often. As I mentioned before, if you have something nice to say, if you're impressed, you heard that the bacher is doing well, he told you, or you heard from a member of anhola, tell it to him. Tell him how much you have nachas from him. Tell him how much you enjoy hearing these good besuras. And this will encourage him and inspire him to go mechayil al chayil. So, of course, it's not an easy decision to take, but it's important to send away a bacher to yeshiva. You have to know what kind of yeshiva you're sending him to, and is it actually the right yeshiva for him? And but you make that decision and you make it correctly. Be in touch with the anhol of the yeshiva. Be in touch with the bacher. Encourage him. Be'ezus Hashem, you'll see a lot of nachas.
Rabbi Sternberg, would you mind speaking a little bit to this nekuda about the right yeshiva?
Okay, so first of all, Yeshakayach Rabbi Gordon, everything you said was beautifully on target. The right yeshiva. So today, especially when it comes to yeshiva g'dayla, the parents almost don't have a say. And the bachrim know where they want to go, and they're going with their friends. And it shouldn't be fully that way, but that just might be the way it is. But let's talk about the positive side. Where their good friends are going, the friends that have a good influence on them, they thrive with them. Sometimes the group that they're going with is more important than where they're going. Even very good yeshivas have years where it's a better year because it's a better group of bachrim, and they have a down year when it's not the best group of bachrim. So the fact that they want to go with their friends, if their friends are good friends, and that's where the chevra are going, then that is, again, how much parents have the power to change that and to argue with their children at that point of yeshiva g'dayla. But If they are going with a good group, you could be calm about that. That is probably one of the most important things that are going to influence their experience in yeshiva. When it comes to yeshiva ktana, this is more where the parents are choosing. And it's very important that sometimes your child wants to go to a certain yeshiva because that's where the leaders of the class are going, or that has a better name. And what you have to really look into is a yeshiva where your child is going to be successful. Some children need more personal attention. Some children don't. There are certain yeshivas that are great yeshivas. They're not good at giving personal attention to the students. And not everyone needs it as much. Okay, some people like the space. Some people will get the personal attention anyway because they're the type of person that people notice more and give more time to. It's really a very individual question for your child. Think his, academically, what are his capabilities? Don't send him to a place that's above his head where he's going to be a failure. It's not about, at that age, it's not about where his friends are going, because they're still very flexible in making friends at that point. You really need to find the school that's going to meet his academically where he's up to and his personality. I see Bachrim that fought with their parents to go to certain yeshivas that are considered top of the line yeshivas in Yeshiva Ktana, and they fail terribly because they don't get the right attention and because the learning is too high for them. So you want a good yeshiva, you want a good environment. Everyone needs an environment of your Shemayim and a good environment, but you have to take into consideration your child's needs.
Rabbi Farkas, what would you like to add on this Nakuda?
The truth is, I think everything was said. Rabbi Sternberg brought it all the way well. I agree to every word he said. The idea of having the right friends, which is one of the most important nekudas. Also about the fact that it's a very individual question. Also, you have to know your kid and know what he needs. Very, very beautifully explained what he said. I think it's very important. I have not much to add. Maybe one nekuda, which I always tell the Bachrim, that this is something I speak to Bachrim a lot when it comes to that stage that they're changing from here to another yeshiva, going from one place to another. So I always tell them, you should know one thing. The yeshiva you're going to go has major miles, but also there is a lot of things which are not going to be easy. Every yeshiva has its challenges. Every yeshiva has its great things, but every yeshiva, there's no yeshiva which is perfect. And it depends a lot in you, where is your energy going to be channelized. In other words, you can come to a place and see, oh, the food is not good, this is not good, and then you're complaining all year and you're wasted a year. The yeshiva is not going to change because you're complaining, usually. The yeshiva is going to be the same yeshiva. The only one who wasted the year was you. So that's one nekuda, which is after the decision. Okay, I decided, came to the conclusion, make sure that your kid should have very clear, you decided this is the place, look at it, and Ashgoche Prati, Samokim Asherif Haravaye, the Eibishter is the one who chooses where we go. You only think, you make decisions, but whatever, you think the best, but have the brain, have the seichel to concentrate on the positive, concentrate on what you can get from this place, and what you can't. If there's something you see it's not, don't look at it, forget about it. This year you're going to get some good nigle because there's good nigle here. Okay, fine, so that's what I'm going to do this year. This year I'm going to get some good fabrenges. Okay, so that's going to, if there's something which is missing, so next year I'm going to go to another place, whatever. Another nekude, which already speaking about it, which is also very important. It's not, I don't think, like Rabbi Sternberg said, it's not, maybe we're not going to change the situation, but it has to be said also, is that the matzav that Bachrim are living every year from one yeshiva to another, that's not the best. We should try to convince our Bachrim that, you come to a yeshiva to stay there for a few years. If you really want to get something, you have to be in a place that the minhag that became last year, the Bachrim every year change yeshivas, they try out all the kind of yeshiva. In the end, you don't really get anything. The whole name of yeshiva comes from the word of Isyashus. I know that it's not a lot we can do, like Rabbi Sternberg said, Bochrim, whatever their friends do, that's what they do, and that's what's going on. But it's not the ideal thing. We should try to convince, if we have a certain ashpoe, that our Bocher should stay in the yeshiva for a few years. That's the way you get a real pneumistic connection, ashpoe, that the yeshiva should give.
Rabbi Farkash, I want to just continue in this note that one of the things that as Chassidei Chabad, the most valuable thing perhaps is the inyan of lachluchis. And the question is, as parents, what could we do to help our children get that varmkeit, that certain magic, magic is not the right word, but the varmkeit and the appreciation for the arum of Chassidus, for the spirit of Chassidus. What could we as parents do to help them in this area?
So the first thing is, we mentioned already before in the beginning, the inyan of Fabrengen. So Lachluchis, one of the main foundations of Lachluchis comes through a Fabrengen. So that reminds me a story. I remember I was to be Mevaker Chaylim, a famous Chassid, Rabbi Abbe Pliskin. I remember like 30 years ago, Rabbi Mendel Futterfass asked the Bochrim in 1970 we should go visit Rabbi Abbe Pliskin. He was already then in Borough Park in a certain home, whatever you call it, in a Kameshavskenim. It was it was already very almost not moving. So Rabbi Mendel asked the Bochrim we should go see Rabbi Abbe. So we went, and I remember it took him like an hour to say a few words. What he was saying to us was that when he was the first time on Yechidus by the Rebbe, and he came from Australia he was a shliach in Australia, then he came back to 770. So the Rebbe told Rebbe he should fabring with the Bochim. And he asked the Rebbe, what's a fabringen? And the Rebbe told him, lachluchis. Reinbringen lachluchis in the Bochim. And of Akel, the Rebbe told him, reinbringen lachluchis in the Bochim. And he asked, how do you do it? And the Rebbe said, a fabringen. What I don't remember exactly now. So that's for sure that the inyan of lachluchis, varimkeit, and the whole reichkeit and the whole geschmack of Chassidus goes through Chassidus of Fabrengen. Another point which is very important also, and this is something which we should encourage a lot, is the inyan of reading the Friedrich Rebbe Siches. The Friedrich Rebbe Siches is one of the major, most strongest Yesaides of Lachluchis that you can get from. We should encourage a lot our Bochrim to read, and the kids and the Bochrim, the young, they should read Sefer Zichleines, Sefer Asiches, Tomim, the Reshimes, Yumanim of the Friedrich Rebbe, which is an Igris Kodesh, which is a real fountain of Lachluchis, of Chassidus, Harum Chassidus. And another Nekuda, a third one, which is in our generation became very, very, very accessible, which is the Sfarim that come out from Chassidim. Yeah. So that's a very important Nekuda. The Sfarim that come out, like Reb Nissen, Reb Shlomo Chaim, Reb Peretz, here we have Zenikel, Vechule. There's some beautiful Sfarim about Chassidim, and that's something that gives the Bochrim a major ashirus. I see someone wrote over here on the chat about what the Rebbe told Rebbe Abbe, that by the Fabrengen he should say stories of Chassidim, not of Rabbeim. That's also, I heard it from him then, and that when we came to Mevake Choylehim, he told us that the Rebbe told him to make sich Fabrengen, Lachluchis. And the Rebbe he asked the Rebbe, what's a Fabrengen? So the Rebbe told him that Zeil Lamais of Chassidim. So they think it's too high for them. He told them about Chassidim, they can relate to it. Yeah, and Mikasha with the Parsha, something. That's what the Rebbe told him. Yeah.
Rabbi Sternberg. Unmute yourself.
Sorry. When we talk about the lachluchis, to translate this, it sounds like it's the juice. We're not talking about the technical knowledge It's more about that knowledge becoming our identity. And these are not the things you could teach. It's like a cold or it's like corona. You catch it. You catch it from being around the right people, and you catch it from living a certain lifestyle. This has a lot to do with the environment at home. And it's from subtle messages that our children get from our behavior and from what's going on at home, more than what they're taught officially with messages. We can never tell them, you have to have juice. You have to love it. You can't tell someone you have to love it. But when Yiddishkeit is warm, when Yiddishkeit is geschmack, when a Shabbos table is geschmack, when it's a Chassidish Yom Tov, and they see their parents are dressed different, they're acting different, it's part of who we are. It's a special day in our house. Then a child picks up, this is who I am. And if this is who I am, this is what I celebrate. It's what I live with. It's not just information that I know. So yes, as far as where they might be able to pick it up is from reading this, from that, from Fabranians. As parents, what we have to know is, how much are your children going to care about their cousins? As important as it is to their parents. If their parents are family people, the children are going to be family people. And this is the same with Chassidus being like a family thing, like a personal thing, not academics. And when it means something to the parents and the parents are living with it and expressing what they learned, there's a light in their face. When we celebrate our Yiddishkeit and our Chassidishkeit, then this is something more personal and there's more juice to it by our children. I don't want to focus on the negative side, but what drains someone from lachluchas is the opposite. And we're not talking about bad things. When someone is very involved with entertainment, even if it's not bad entertainment, this takes their mind away from appreciating subtle and edler concepts. When they're pulled into the culture of the world, that's the biggest, that's the most damaging thing for the lachluchas. We're not talking about things that are inappropriate, just being worldly. That means we celebrate worldliness is the opposite of celebrating our Yiddishkeit and our Chassidishkeit. If that's where my passion is, then that takes away from my passion in other things. So that's another point to have in mind.
Thank you, Rabbi Gordon. I just want to mention there's someone asked the question about what is lachluchis, just as a definition. So I'm just going to mention this as a general point that Hasidus, in addition to the content and the behaviors of Hasidus, the minhagim of Hasidus, let's say saying chitas and Rambam and fulfilling the Rebbe's takonis, there's a certain warmth, there's a spirit of what it means to be a Chassid, and that's what we refer to as lachluchis. Rabbi Gordon, please.
I think that what was said was fantastic. I think it's very, very important for parents to realize that you can't just preach to your children what you expect of them. You have to be a shining example. Children thrive on the example that they see from their parents, and children have a very, very hard time when what's expected of them is in contradiction to what they see from their parents. So what was said, I agree with 100%. It's very important that parents should show their children a dugma chaya, living example of living a chassidish life, whether the parents are shluchim, whether they're mashpiyim, whether they are balabatim. It doesn't really matter. What matters is what's important, what's exciting, what do you look forward to, what is celebrated. And when the right things are celebrated and the right things, there's an excitement and an enthusiasm about the right things, then the children will ultimately emulate that and have the lachluchas in the right inyan.
In the spirit of this, I also, as a parent, as a mother, one of the things that Chassidus speaks about is the inyan of davening ba'arichus, the daven at length, especially on Shabbos. And as parents, sometimes we see Bachurim who are Chassidish Bachurim, and they take learning and davening very seriously. And we see that when it comes to Shabbos, basically they just stay in shul, and they come home to make Kiddush maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So as a parent, what is it? What's going on that suddenly my child completely ignores any seder in the house, ignores the time with the family, and what are they doing? They're davening. Like, what does that mean? In other words, how could a parent be brought in to appreciate what is happening? Why is this important? What's the value of what's happening? And is it worth the exchange, so to speak? So, Rabbi Gordon, if you could address this Nakuda.
Again, similar to what I answered on the question about the Fabrengens. It very much depends on what the child is up to, whether he is sincere, whether he's real. If a child is just wasting his time and hanging out with friends and maybe starting his day too late, and therefore he comes home late, and obviously we have to find ways of guiding him in the right direction. But if a child is real and he's authentic and he actually gets up early in the morning and he learns Chassidus and he takes the advice and the guidance of his mashpiyim, take the concepts that he learned about in Chassidus and think about them and dwell on them and allow them to become internalized within himself, and then he's actually working on his davening at his level, try and develop a relationship with the Eibishter. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Each and every one of us needs to have a relationship with the Eibishter. And that's what davening is meant to be. An opportunity to connect, to relate to the Eibishter. The Eibishter is real. We call out to him. We cry to him. We are encouraged by his presence. And davening makes all that real. So if a parent has a child who is coming home after the family has the Suda because he was davening until now, and it's for real, I think they are very, very fortunate. And may we have many, many families that have this problem, as long as it's being done in an authentic manner, age appropriate, of course. And the parents should be, again, like I said before, communicating with their children. Tell me over what you learned. Of course, we have to. It's probably the mashpiyim's job more than the parents to teach the children that one doesn't ignore the minyan. One shouldn't ignore answering Kaddish, Kedusha, and Baruch Hu. One should be present and hear Kriyas HaTorah and make sure to do everything as a Chassidish Bacher should do. But davening ba'arichas is a beautiful thing, and we spoke about lachluchas before. Davening is one of the greatest sources of lachluchas, and if a child is davening and enjoying his davening and he's growing from it, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And there is opportunity to spend time with family, and there's an opportunity for davening. It's enough time in life for both of those things. They don't have to be a contradiction to one another.
Rabbi Farkash, on this nakuda of davening ba'arichus.
First of all, the translation of the word lachluchis is the opposite of dry. How do you say it in English? Because we're saying perushim, but we didn't translate it.
Moisture.
Okay, fine. So there is a Sikha of the Rebbe from Yutes Kislev. It's printed also in the Kutei Siches in the first Halakim. If I'm not mistaken, it's in Chelik Beis, Yutes Kislev in the Isofis. The Tzafabrengen from Yutes Kislev, Tovshin Yutes. Tovshin Yutes, 1959 was the year the Rebbe started streaming about the Ufaratsto. Famous Ufaratsto year, and from there that became the word of Lubavitch. The Rebbe conquered the world with the Ufaratsto. So you see in those siches, especially in that Fabrengen, Yutes Kislev, the Rebbe explains over there what's a Chassidish Ahom. Beautiful siche, like let's say short and sweet, like we say, and very basic, very fundamental, explaining what's a Chassidish Ahom. What does it mean, a Chassidish Ahom? Ahom of Ufaratsto. And the Rebbe was taking the three pillars, the three Eseides, the three Kavim, of Teire, Avoide, Gmilas Chasodim, and explaining how does it look in a regular home and how does it look in a Chassidish home. What's Teire in Achsidish Home? What's Avoide in Achsidish Home? And what's Gmilas Chasadim in Achsidish Home? So when the Rebbe came about Avoide, over there in that Siche, the Rebbe says it's a Mugedike Siche. So what's Pshat Avoide? So Avoide, we know it's Tefillah. So the Rebbe there tells the story about the Tzemach Tzedek with his son. The Tzemach Tzedek, one of the Tzemach Tzedek's sons, his name was Yosef Yitzchak. The Frierdiker Rebbe was named, the Frierdiker Rebbe was his grandson, it was named after him. Yosef Yitzchak, he was married to a family of Chernobyl. His wife was also from Beis Harav on the other side. But the Mishpacha had different customs, different minhagim. And one of the conditions that the father-in-law made that they should daven betzibur. He wanted him to daven betzibur. And he said, okay, davening betzibur. Davening betzibur, the literal translation is davening with a minyan. And then they came to the Sheva Brachas already, he came late, and they were all waiting, and then the Meit Kiddush, he came late. And the father-in-law was very upset. We made a condition. He knew that the Lubavitchers like to come late for the daven late. And he made it night before. That was the condition. And he was masking and he broke it on the first Shabbos. So then he told them, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, the Tzemach Tzedek's son, told them, I heard from my father that tzibur, davening with tzibur means collecting the 10 keches of the neshama, and davening with the 10 keches ha-nefesh. That is tzibur. And that's it. So there was no one to talk to anymore. and the Rebbe tells that story, and the Rebbe brings it out in a very practical, the Rebbe says it over on the Tzicha, very practical words, he says. And Achsidish Hom, so the education is that the minyan is finished, and the Baal Habayis, the father, he did not finish yet. He's still davening, and he comes home later. That's part of the education of Achsidish house. Now, of course, sometimes I'm not saying that a kid comes from a house that the father didn't do it. Does not mean that that's not you say this of education of Chassidish home. So the idea that a bacher should get that chinuch and that you don't come home right away after davening because there's a meal and the family is sitting together. Adarabah, you're sitting after davening and you're continuing and you're davening a little deeper and then more and you come on later. This is something which is very, very, we should appreciate it a lot, and especially in our generation that there's such a little emphasizing the inyan of Avodas HaTefillah. If someone has that schus, that his son is taking it serious. So again, like Rabbi Gordon said, if he gets up late and he comes home at 3 o'clock because he got up late and he came to the second minyan after. So that's like another that's a problem in the source of the inyan. So then we should maybe somehow speak to the mashpia. You should have a talk with the bacher. Sometimes parents are harder to have a in those inyanim. We should mix in the mashpia in that inyan. They should work with this bacher. What's going on? But I'm speaking, and the question was like a serious bacher that he takes it serious, and he comes home. So we should take it. It's hard sometimes because family wants to be together and it's nice and beautiful. But in the education of Chassidus, Adarabah, that anoge has to be so appreciated that the parents should tell the son, we're happy that you're doing it. And then for us, and we're going to keep the chant even on the fire. You should have even a varma chant after you're down. Anyway.
Shekayach, Rabbi Sternberg, on this noise.
First of all, the parents should be able to appreciate what the concept is. So children, when they're little children, they daven out loud with their class, every word beautifully. And then they grow out of that. And they quietly, it moves to moving their lips and very little voice and very little attention. And the quicker you could do it, the smarter you are, the better you are. And then you're hoping they're going to get to a point where they're going to regain their davening, every word beautifully and having a meaningful davening. This is what every one of us should be davening for and hoping, that our children get a taste to really want to daven, because that's really the battery of our Yiddishkeit. So the first step that a young bacher will be going, if he's taking davening seriously, is to learn Pirush HaMilos, to know what every word means, to try to think about it when he's saying it, and to think what, for someone, especially if he doesn't speak Hebrew, it's a lot of information. And even if he does speak Hebrew, not everything is, from the language that we use today. There's a lot to learn just to understand simply what we're saying by davening. And just to have that in mind throughout the whole davening should take 5-6 hours, definitely for a beginner. So just in trying to daven the way we're supposed to daven, we're supposed to know what we're saying, takes time. So even for a young bacher, no one is too young to decide to want to know what they're saying by davening, and try to have that in mind. And that's a beautiful thing. A step further, as they're growing and they're deeper, davening, not just should we know what David HaMelech meant when he said it, I have to know what I mean when I'm saying that. So I'm saying, Veidul Hashem ki tov, what am I thanking him for? And when I'm saying, Ana Hashem, what am I asking him for? And when I'm talking about Ashrei Adam B'teach Bach, where do I need B'tachon? What's going on in my life? The Rebbe once told a Bacher in Yechidus, he asked the Rebbe, how can davening be interesting and meaningful every day when I say the same thing every day? So the Rebbe told him, but every day your life story is different. So what does this pasuk mean to you today? And then one day you feel like you don't have what you want to thank Hashem for. Things are not going good. What is Hoidul Hashem? What are you going to thank Hashem for today? And you're going to have to think in a little deeper. So when a bacher is really trying to make davening personal and meaningful, that this is what I really mean. I feel like saying this to Hashem, even if he's just going to take one mizmor, one part of davening to do that. This is something that takes time. And if you're worried about his relationship with his family, I just want to say a beautiful story. When my mother came to the age of shidduchim, and my grandfather was telling her that we're looking into this bacher, he's a very chassidish bacher, very learned, and she said, I'm afraid that perhaps he's too chassidish, and he's not going to know how to make me happy as an American girl. So my grandfather told my mother, no. The more chassidish he is, he only has one Eibishter and one Rebbe and one wife. I'll leave it with that.
I want to also address, just to add, this is also a question that came up, is that, one of the zmanim of Tomim that are a little bit between is the time of Miftzoyim. In other words, Seder ends, and the Bacharim go out, and in a certain way, the yeshiva is not being mashgiach in a strong way of what's happening on Miftzoyim. And we understand that when they go out, that it's very likely that Bacharim will be exposed to different things when they go out. And obviously the Rebbe wants them to go out on Miftzoyim. And as parents, we also feel, when they're in yeshiva, so we talk about we could control the environment a little bit. We're choosing where they should go, what's good for him, what's a good fit. But when it comes to Miftzoyim, really anything could happen. So the question is, what do we as parents, what does the yeshiva do to help give our children a footing of staying, of not allowing what happens around them to get in? Rabbi Gordon, if I could ask you to address that question.
Okay, there's a famous expression in halacha. When something is busy expelling, it doesn't absorb. This is a simple halacha that we know that when something has salt on it, it has a halacha of being hot. So when you salt meat to get the blood out, the question is, the blood is now in contact with salted meat. And salted meat has the same halacha as hot meat. So why isn't the blood being reabsorbed in the meat? And the answer is that the chemical reaction that causes the meat to expel the blood prevents it from absorbing the blood. So when you're busy expressing, you're not absorbing. Rabbi Sternberg mentioned last week that it's not about damage control. It's about setting up the bacher for life with the right ideas, with the right shturim, with the right koch, with the right enthusiasm. So you can have a bacher in yeshiva 6 days a week, perfect hashgacha, everything is great. But the question is, we don't want him just to be damage control. We want him to be a source of inspiration to others. We want him to be excited about his Yiddishkeit in a manner that he could be comfortable to go out in the street, find a fellow Yid, put on film with him, encourage him to put up a mezuzah, encourage him to eat kosher, encourage a Jewish woman to light Shabbos candles, have a kosher at home, to learn Torah, to put up a mezuzah, whatever it may be. And this is something, this is a tremendous gift that the Bachrim get from the experience of Mitzrayim. You listen to a Bacher who might be struggling in yeshiva in various different areas. When he goes out on Mitzrayim and he meets a person and he tells him with enthusiasm how fantastic it is to do a mitzvah, what a wonderful thing. He talks to him about the Rebbe, he talks to him about the Eibishter, he talks to him about mitzvahs with such a passion. It's the most incredible, beautiful thing. So I think that generally speaking, of course, there could be situations that are problematic and they have to be dealt with and looked into, and you have to get the right person to talk to the Bacher about it and to find out how it could be. But generally speaking, the experience of Mitzrayim is the healthiest thing for the education, for the development of the Bacher, where he's in the driver's seat, where he is excited and he is inspiring others. We know the famous mimer of the Rebbe, where the Rebbe spoke about Al Tikra Vayikra El Vayakri. There's calling in the name of Hashem, and then there's inspiring others to call in the name of Hashem. The Rebbe said in his first mimer, if we want the Vayikra to succeed, there needs to be the Vayakri. If you want one to succeed in his own avodah of growing as a warm, inspired chassid, he needs to be actively involved in warming up others and inspiring others. And by doing so, he turns out to be the greatest beneficiary.
Rabbi Sternberg.
Thank you, Rabbi Gordon, for that. And I want to explain this concept of getting into the driver's seat and being a leader and what that does. So personally, as a teacher, I tell this to my students all the time, that as I'm preparing a class, there are certain questions that I have, certain things I don't understand. And I'm like, I hope no one asks this question because I don't know how I'm going to explain it. When I get into the classroom and I'm teaching it, and someone asks that question, I have the answer. Because the most powerful way to connect with something and really understand it, feel it, have das, have a relationship with the concept, is when you're the one teaching it. It becomes yours. And the gift that the Rebbe gave us, the Rebbe obviously cares for every Yid and wants us to go out to everyone and share Yiddishkeit and Chassidus with everyone. But it's clear from the Rebbe's letters that the Rebbe also had in mind his Chassidim, that them going out and being teachers is the greatest way of them becoming one with everything that they're learning. And this is also something the Rebbe writes to a parent, says this, that your child didn't go on American Shlichus, doesn't go on Mitzrayim, and you're writing because he's shy. He says that's exactly why he should go on Mitzrayim. This would develop his confidence and this would open him up. So the Rebbe also had that in mind. Yes, the Rebbe has in mind the whole world. He also has us in mind, and turning us into leaders is something very powerful. And like Rabbi Gordon said, it's Machazik Bachim that struggle in Yerushalayim, that they finally connect with Yiddishkeit in a real way. But I do want to bring out that the fact that they could go to Manhattan on Mitzrayim doesn't mean they could go there shopping. There's a special koyach that we have going on Mitzrayim, the fact, like Rabbi Gordon said, when you're influencing others, you're not being influenced. But there's also, we're going with koyach HaMishalech. We're going with the koyach of the Rebbe. And this is not a place where a Fruma Yid should be. We go to certain places that a Fruma Yid, this is not where a Bacher should be shopping. And the fact that I go there on Mitzrayim doesn't mean that this is a place that I could be during the week. And one more point, the Rebbe wanted Bacher not to go on Mitzrayim alone. From all the history of what I heard of Bacher that spoke about different things that they were exposed to on Mitzrayim and damaging things that they were exposed to on Mitzrayim, is when they were alone. A Bacher should never be alone on Mitzrayim. That's from the rules that the Rebbe put down, and it's crucial that they should be matzliach, and sometimes it's a short Friday, so they want to split the route. I'll go to that half, you'll go to that half. A bacher should not be by himself on the tzayim. That's a natural shmira that keeps them in a safer state of mind and physically as well.
Speaking about this Indian of nisyonos and challenges in this area, so I want to segue from here into the question of how, and Rabbi Sternberg, I'll ask you to begin, what can we do to give our children a healthy experience with the internet? Or can we? In other words, to parents, any instruction, guidelines, etc., regarding the internet?
Okay, so really to cover this concept, to do justice to this subject, we need a lot more time, but just some very important points. Number one, it starts from very young. If our children are growing up in a house where everyone's on their devices, and this is the place to be, and that's the thing to do, it's going to be very hard to control the relationship with technology and with the internet when they get older. We see babies fighting for their parents' phones because they see how dear it is to their parents. And if it's in their blood from so young, it's so hard to fight with them when they're teenagers. And this is just something they feel like they need. And we know where they got that from. So that's number one when they're really young. The house has to be a safe place. I deal a lot with Bachrim that fell to the wrong places on the internet. And almost all of them, this happened in the comfort of their own homes, on devices that their parents let them use. On their parents' personal devices, they leave their phones around and they're not locked. And most houses, unfortunately, still do not have proper filters installed for all the reasons that it limits what the parents need to do. It's expensive. It's not convenient. We have to know that if the devices at home are not filtered, you're guaranteed that by the age of 13, your child was exposed to the worst things in the world. So we need to be smart, to trust them that they're only going to be going to the right places. If your child is healthy, he should not be trusted. Al pi Torah, no one is trusted. Ein apotropos, no one is trusted. A healthy person, if he's not made out of styrofoam, needs to be watched. We need these guards put down in our lives. There's absolutely no justification for having unfiltered internet at home. So that's one thing. It's also very important to have an open dialogue about this. It shouldn't just be, we're not letting you do this. We need to explain what our concerns are. We need to share with them what we're doing for ourselves. I'm also human. I don't want to trust myself either. I have a filter on my phone. I have a friend that gets a list of the things that I do, just that I'm thinking twice before I do something. And to share our own experiences of what we're doing to use it correctly, both in time management, in keeping the borders between family time and professional time, ruchnius and gashmius. When we show a living example and we have an open dialogue about it, the chances of them not looking for inappropriate things outside of the house are going to be much better. So we need guards, and this parasha shoftim v'shoftim, we need guards. To just believe that everything is going to be good isn't the smart thought. In the same time, we need education, and the two together, with a lot of davening, we can hope that our children will make it through their teenage years safely, and they should be proud. I think this is a very important point. They should be proud. They shouldn't feel deprived. If a child's going to feel deprived, everyone in my class has it, and poor me, I don't, then sooner or later he's going to find it. So along with education is, you don't have that, you don't spend so much screen time, that's why your head works better, that's why your memory is better, that's why you connect with what you're learning better. We're proud, this is the standard in our home. What's going on in other houses, I'm not going to talk about that. We're a Chassidish house, we're a higher standard. You should be proud of yourself. And if a child's proud that they don't spend their time as much, both in time and in content, they're more careful. If they're proud, that's the greatest safeguard that you could put down. But we need a little bit of everything.
Rabbi Gordon, if I could ask you to address this nakuda about having a healthy relationship with the internet or any relationship, etc.
I think it's important for children to understand the principle of Kol Masha Bara Kodesh Baruch Hu Ba'olamai Le'braya El L'chveidai. Everything the Eibishter created, he created it. It should be used to glorify HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So internet exists in order to spread the word of Hashem, in order to spread Torah, in order to spread Chassidus, in order that we, the world of Kedusha, should be able to influence the world outside of us. Therefore, Shluchim should use the internet, and people that teach Chassidus online should be using the internet, and it should be used as a vehicle to spread the word of Hashem in the widest and broadest way possible. Chas v'shalom, to take something that the Eibishter created for the purpose of spreading Elokus in the world, and to use it in a way that compromises the presence of the Eibishter and the Eibishter's manifesting himself in this world, by using it for ways that are detrimental to our relationship with the Eibishter and with our Yiddishkeit, would be the greatest crime in the world, because you're taking something that the Eibishter created specifically for the purpose of spreading light and bringing it closer to Mashiach, and to use it for the opposite would be the greatest crime in the world. And I think it's important to instill in children the attitude that the purpose of this technology is to prepare the world for Mashiach, and not chas v'shalom in any way to stand in the way of Mashiach's coming. And if you can bring this into a child's feeling and living with this concept, he'll understand why when we're not engaged in that type of work, we should have the least interaction with this type of technology that is possible. And it's a healthy thing, it's a good thing, the child will benefit from it for Bezos Hashem for his whole life. The later he comes in contact with this type of technology, the later he is exposed to the internet, the better it will be for him and his mishpacha, his children and his children's children. They should see it as a positive thing.
Moving forward on this general nakuda, in other words, besides the internet and miftzoyim, bechlal, what do we, in yeshiva, most of what we find is bacharim are learning. They're learning chassidus, they're learning nigla, but the Rebbe wants all of our talmidim to be neighbors lahoyer. The Rebbe wants us that they should have a hashpah, and the question is, what could we do as parents, and is there something that the yeshiva does that as parents, once we know that that's in place, so we have an understanding. But for many parents, the way it looks right now is that our children go to yeshiva, they learn nigla and chassidus, and then we put them out into the world to have a hashpah, but they really have there's no damasha toshiv, there's no understanding of how the world works. So the question is, what do we do? Do we do something to train, to teach our talmidim to be impactful when they go out into the world? Or we say, no, we teach them nigla and chassidus, and the rest we just leave up to the Eibishter. Rabbi Gordon.
I will, when I was in Ola Torah, going back many years ago, I was before Bar Mitzvah, there was a bacher who was becoming Bar Mitzvah. And he went into Yechidus to the Rebbe, and he told the Rebbe, just before his Bar Mitzvah, he was learning in Ola Torah, he was learning only Lamud HaKodesh, and he said to the Rebbe that I want to start learning Lamud HaChol. My sisters go to Beis Rivka, they learn Lamud HaChol, I find what they're bringing home very, very fascinating, and I want to start Lamud HaChol. The Rebbe said to him, Bald kommt Mashiach, me wird es nicht dar. Mashiach is coming soon, we won't need it. And the Rebbe basically told him not to begin learning the Lamud HaChol. It's not going to be necessary because Mashiach is coming. Now this bacher, and this is why I'm relating this story here in answer to Rabbi Kaplan's question. This bacher is today a head of state shliach, very successful shliach, many shluchim working under him. And the question is, we're talking now 40, 50 years later. Mashiach is coming imminently, but still we're not by the Geula yet. Wouldn't it have been beneficial for this Bacher to have exposure to Limud Chayil? It would have put him in a better position to do his shlichus. And I believe the answer is that what our mission really is to share with the world around us, Ein Oid Milvado. There's nothing else except Hashem. The message is one thing, and the language with which the message is communicated is something else. If you don't have the message, all the language learning, all the instruction in language and communication is not going to help you at all. If you have the message, then it's a small detail how to learn to communicate the message. So the most important thing in educating Talmidim, Tomim, is that they should have the message that Ein Oid Milvado. That's what the world is thirsting to hear. The world is thirsting to hear that Elokus, godliness, is real, and that the Sheker Ha'olam, that the falsehood of the world is false. And when a Bacher was educated in a way that is his reality and he lives it, then he will definitely be a success on Shlichus. He will find an eitzah one way or another how to communicate it, but he has what to sell. And everybody will be appreciating what he's offering. And if Chas v'Shalom, as a result of the fact that you spend your time teaching him all the tricks of the trade, you miss out on inculcating into him the essence of Ein Oid Milvado, then he might have all the tricks of the trade, he might have the best communication skills, but he doesn't have what to sell. So therefore, the best way to prepare a Bacher for Shlichus, the best way to prepare him to be an inspiration and a light, Ner L'Hoyer, is to fill him with a true relationship with the Eibishter, a true relationship with Torah, a true relationship with Chassidus, a true relationship with the Rebbe, a true living with Mashiach, and in that way he is the most suitable in the most suitable position to be a successful shliach and to illuminate his own life and the life of people around him, and to be very actively, successfully involved in transforming the world from the Golus world to the world of Geula Shlema, B'Meheira B'Yameinu Amen.
Shkoyach, Rabbi Sternberg.
So there's not a lot to add. This is the point. I don't think anyone would look at the success of shluchim, exactly their communication skills. What makes a shliach successful is who he is and what he has a passion for. No one's going to change their life and become frum and start keeping Shabbos because you have such a professional English. It makes it easier to listen to the speech, perhaps, but what changes a person's life is that someone was talking from their heart, that this is who they are. And they could have a broken English, and they could, mistakes in the English and everything. People don't even notice it when you don't notice it. When you're not into what you sound like, you're into what you're giving, and you're into the person that you're talking to, that's all they feel and hear. And they don't make a big deal of the grammar issues. When a person's trying to sound all sophisticated, and it's one little mistake, it's felt a lot more. But again, that's not what shlichus is about. And regarding the question of knowing Damash or Toshav and answering certain questions, if a Baruch is learning Chassidus without officially asking and answering these questions, he's getting the knowledge that he needs. And an intellectual Baruch thinks, and he gets a lot of training on Miftzayim. So it's not something that we're busy with. Sometimes in yeshiva we have a question-answer session, and typically it's not about the type of questions you get on Miftzayim. A Bacher gains that knowledge, but again, giving a person the right answer isn't what changes a person's life. It's the right person giving that answer, and that has much more of an influence.
Yeah, Shkoyach, I just want to mention that one of the participants today posted a message that there was an incident going back to the discussion about Miftzayim, that in France, Bachurim went on Miftzayim to a certain location, and the Rebbe asked who gave permission for the Bachurim to go there. So based on this story, there would be even though even though generally speaking, if we're going out to be mashpia, we won't be influenced by that. It seems there should be some type of general oversight about where Bachrim should and shouldn't go. In other words, that certain places would be off limits, like we know with regards to shlichus in certain areas that the Rebbe felt that certain places weren't ready yet, and so on. Also, with regards to internet, one of the questions that's being raised is about from what age screening should happen. I want to mention, based on something that was shared here last week, that the younger a child is, the less they understand, the more impressionable they are, the more pure they are, and the more important it is that we keep their neshamas pure and clean. And in addition to that, when we take something away from children without replacing it with something positive, it could have a negative impact. So if children are using internet as an outlet, and then the parents one day come about and say, you can't do this, it's oh, that's it, no more, and they leave the children with a void, it's not an effective way. It's important just practically that we have to replace, we have to offer something positive as another way for them to have what to do, to engage them. And I'd like to ask both Rabbi Gordon and Rabbi Sternberg to conclude by sharing appropriately as we go into this Zman of Chodesh Elul. And in many yeshivas around the world, Chodesh Elul also carries an undertone or an overtone of going to the Rebbe. There's a hachanas being made that we're going to the Rebbe. So something to share, a nakuda, about what we can do today to enhance, to strengthen, to bring more of a presence of the Rebbe in the lives of our children. Rabbi Gordon.
I'll just begin by saying, over the years, that I'm working with Bachrim, I've seen Bachrim gain tremendously from their journeys to the Rebbe. Obviously, many Bachrim need that their journey to the Rebbe should be structured and supervised with a Seder, especially if they're going for a longer journey. When we went for Tishrei, we would go, the whole yeshiva, and we would have a Seder there. In the early days, Rabbi Chadakov himself, personally, there was a time that we had a Seder in the Chav B'Torah building with a Bachrim that came from London. And Rabbi Chadakov personally came and visited our Seder, and I'm sure gave it over to the Rebbe. It's very important that Bachrim go for a longer amount of time to the Rebbe. There should be a very structured Seder, especially nowadays. Generally, I find that in many cases, short visits are beneficial. If Bachrim go, let's say, for Yud Shvat, I find that the shorter the visit, the more intense it is, the greater is the benefit. But every Bachar is different. And there's no question about it that having a relationship with the Rebbe, the Yechida of Klal Yisrael, is beneficial for every chassid and especially for a developing Bachar. And a very important part of that relationship is a journey to the Rebbe. At the same time, one cannot say that just because I'm going to the Rebbe, I'm pater mikol mitzvahs. One has to look after the Bachrim and make sure that they are not chas v'shalom losing out by the fact that there's a lack of structure. So it's an important thing, but like everything else, it has to be used and not abused.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Sternberg.
I just want to add that just like if if we live far from our parents, we would think that once a year we're going to bring our children to see their grandparents. They have to feel at home in the house that I grew up in. I want them to feel that they belong to that family. A big part of being a chassid, especially for the youngsters that are growing up and they weren't there in 770 and the earlier years, this has to become their place. Part of their identity is that I come to the Rebbe. It's crucial. It's crucial. And what we have to know is that just like when we saw the Rebbe physically, coming to the Rebbe was a boost. And yes, even then we needed to be careful to use our time correctly. But coming to the Rebbe was a boost. This is where we got our chayas from. This is true today, equally. Nothing changed as far as what the Rebbe is giving us. Nothing changed as far as coming to the Rebbe being a tremendous boost. And we see this by the Bachram. What helps very much in making this experience meaningful and something that they're going to absorb and stay with is how much preparation they made for this journey. A lot of yeshivas do it. There's a mitzvah, they're preparing, they're learning Maimar and Baal Peh, they're fabringing. They're not just coming, they're spiritually coming as well. It's an inner journey that they're preparing for the last month. The more preparation that there was before, the more their kalim, their vessels to really accept that which they get from just being in 770. Will it stay with them? Will it have a everlasting impact? A lot is dependent on how much they were prepared. And then when they come, they use every minute, they appreciate every minute because of all of the preparation that was there before. So that's something we should encourage. Just to finish off, this year, we made a bar mitzvah pretty close to Yud Shvat. And my son came from France for the bar mitzvah. And there was a question, should he stay in 1 week? The whole yeshiva is coming in for Yud Shvat. I paid an extra ticket. Go back to yeshiva. I don't want you to just be here for Yud Shvat. I want you to come. The whole lead up, the week before, there's a buildup of energy, and you come with that to the Rebbe. It resonates, and it's a life-changing experience. Not just to be there, you have to really come there.
Yasher Koyach Gadol. I want to thank both of you, Rabbi Gordon, Rabbi Sternberg, and Rabbi Farkash, for really dealing with all of these very sensitive issues in a very special way. I want to wish you hatzlacha in your work with the Bacharim. And every Talmud is a family. Every Talmud is the reach of all the Yidden that in Mirz Hashem they will bring the Rebbe to. And every person is an Olam Maleh. So the Eibusher should bench you, that all of your koiches should be neise peris in a way that you see how they're actualized. And in Mirz Hashem, our Talmidim will be neiris lahoyer, not only in the world around them, but also in their own homes. Yasher Koyach.